you will notice if you look at the topics for each of these exams that they're pretty similar in content. The exam questions are not the same, but the topics covered on both exams are very similar. Yeah, let's get that one off of there too. I don't want you guys to be confused by that because I think it's changed a little bit since then. So, but yeah, so you'll notice that the topics covered are pretty much the same. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to go through each of these for you because you can do that. You all know how to read and how to study. But I am going to kind of give you a little heads up of the types of questions that you might be expecting. Not just the topics, but how they might be worded and all of that stuff. We'll also, I want to do this first, but then after we're done reviewing for the exams, we can go through any Chapter 6 homework questions that you may have. Don't forget the Chapter 5 assessment is due tonight. So make sure you get that done. And then your Chapter 6, you got a lot of stuff due next Tuesday, by next Tuesday. So you've got to complete the assessment we're going to do in class on Thursday, unless you've made arrangements with me to take it at the testing center, which is a possibility if you want to do that. You still wouldn't be able to take it any earlier, like it'll still be due by Thursday, even if you take it at the testing center. So it's not going to exceed your availability. But those of you, yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm writing this down, and I think that I know what you're talking about. But you're not talking about Thursday in 2 days. You're talking about Thursday next week, correct?
No, I'm talking about 2 days.
Oh, that's what the final is?
Your final is, so you've got 2 exams. You got the comprehensive assessment exam, which is the department-wide exam. That one we're going to do in class on Thursday. Unless you make arrangements with me, if you want to take it at the testing center, you can do that instead. But it's still going to be due by Thursday. Whether you take it in class or at the testing center. It's still going to be due.
Thursday, I'll come up there instead of stay down here.
Yes.
Okay.
Come into class on Thursday. Those who are virtual students, though, we're going to do it just like we did the midterm exam. You'll turn your camera on while you're taking the exam, so I can stare you down. To try and make it as close as possible to being in class. So that's the comprehensive assessment. That exam is worth 60 points. I can't remember how many, I'll tell you how many questions it is here in just a minute. They're all multiple choice or true false questions. Like I said, they're questions that were put together by the department. So, I mean, I had a say in that, but it was a couple other instructors as well who had input onto to the questions. It is required, and it does have to be proctored. That's why we're doing it during class time, or you have to take it in the testing center. But if you want to take it in the testing center, let me know as soon as possible. So I've already got you set up. If anybody else does. Otherwise, you are going to need to bring, so those who are in class, you are going to need to bring a computer with you, a laptop, okay? Because it is on Blackboard. So, yeah.
So you can switch me on to take it in class.
You'll take it in class? Okay. So the final is, I'll talk to you about the final as well here in a second. Next week is the end of the semester. Next week is finals week. So that's why there's no, everything for this class is going to be due, any late homework, late assessments, anything like that you still, because remember, you can still get partial credit for them. Those are all due by next Tuesday at midnight. So you can cram it all in. In addition, next Tuesday at midnight, your take-home final will be due also. So you've got, let me just kind of write all of this down. So Thursday, which is 4/27, in class assessment. I should call that comprehensive assessment. Okay, so we're going to take that in class. Need a computer, laptop. Okay, because it's, like I said, it's going to be on Blackboard. Then Tuesday, and this is our last class meeting. On Thursday, okay? On Tuesday, May 2nd, hopefully it'll be a little bit warmer by then because it's May and it's time to warm up. I don't know about you. You have due, so this is what you have due Thursday. Tuesday, you have final exam. This one is take home. Okay, open notes, open book. But that's due by 11:59 p.m. So you'll take that on Blackboard yourself. So you won't come in here to take it. This is, okay. So do you want to take this on your own as well? So forget about the,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha. Okay. In addition, you have your chapter 6 assignments and assessment due. Again, by 11:59 p.m. And any late work, any late assignments or assessments by 11:59 p.m. And again, these are for reduced credit. So you've got 4, I don't know if you guys out there can see it. Oh, and there's Daniela, good.
So do you still come in class on Tuesday the 2nd?
No,
No.
no class. This is the last class meeting, okay? So, no. In fact, you may have other finals at that time, depending upon your own schedule, huh?
It's also on Blackboard, right?
All of this, yes, this is on Blackboard. So this one's on Blackboard. And this one's on Blackboard. Well, and of course, these are same page.
And 60 points and current.
So,
25.
yeah, okay, so the comprehensive assessment is, oh, I gotta remind myself here, sorry. I get several of these to give and I get them mixed up sometimes. I have different rules. Hold on just a second here. That's the wrong one. So the final is the same as the midterm. Oh, the final, so this is going to be, this is chapters 1 through 6. And this is chapter 1 through 6. So cumulative. This one is 125 points. So just like the midterm. 50 points. So this one is 50 points. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of a mess there. Open notes, open book for this one. Comprehensive assessment, you can have, where do I put this? I'm going to erase these things. Oh, my God. Let's do that. So, 1 page of notes, front and back, that you create. Handwrite them if you want, or if you want to print them out, just like the midterm, right? Where we had 1 page of notes, front and back. Calculator. The calculator, so you can use the calculator on your computer. Does that make sense? The little calculator function, the one I'm always using. And then 1 page of scratch paper too. So the same as the midterm, right? And again, this one is open notes, open book, so you can use whatever you need at your disposal. Okay. I think if I've forgotten anything, any of the details. So yeah, you've got a bunch of stuff due on the 2nd. Budget your time wisely. But you'll have the assessment out of the way, so they'll be done. Probably one last thing that you have to worry about. Where's my online students? Everything due at the last minute. And they'll do it at the last minute too. Questions? We'll get into the content here in a minute, but just about the logistics and everything. Yeah.
Is there a limit time?
2 hours. And this one is 60 minutes. That's where I got mixed up with the 60 points. 60 minutes. So 1 hour. So on Thursday as well, we won't meet for the whole time unless you have questions afterwards. So I'll give you back some of the extra time that I've taken from you over the course of the semester when I've kept you guys late 80% of the time. Questions. So who do we have out here? So Thelma, Lisa, Tammy, Daniela, any questions out there? Anybody know what's happened to Rohan? No? No questions. Okay. He has not been in here. Send him an email. He hasn't gotten back to me. Okay. Since there are no questions about the logistics of it, let's start with the assessment, shall we? Right, let me pull up. Actually, I am going to pull up the list so you can see. They are noisy in there. Here we go. Okay, so review of the comprehensive assessment. And you got all of this stuff available to you as well. All right. Start with the first one here. Code of ethics. Remember you're gonna have to go way back to the beginning of the semester on some of this stuff. So you recall the American Payroll Association Code of Ethics. There were all of these bullet points, things that have to be considered if I give you a list of items and ask you which of these is in the Code of Ethics or which of these is not in the Code of Ethics. You need to be able to determine that. So that might be a good thing to add to your notes. Is that Code of Ethics, however you want to abbreviate it. How the payroll and the human resources departments work together. The purpose of them working together, why do they work together, what type of information do they share with each other, that sort of thing. What are the benefits of them working together as well. Let's see. The payroll cycle. So figure 1.8 in your book is a flowchart of the payroll cycle. You know, and by payroll cycle, what we're talking about is what happens first, you know, as far as collecting the hours, approval of the hours, and then where does, you know, once all of that is collected, where does that information go and what is it used for? For example, it's used to create paychecks, first off. But then it's also transferred to the payroll register and the employee earnings record. Those are used then to create certain reports. You know, take a look at that figure and what happens first, what happens next, what happens last, that sort of thing. So the order of that payroll cycle. We talked about a lot of new hire forms that new employees will fill out when they first start working. So like the W-4 form, what's the W-4 form used for? Somebody answering my question? You guys can feel free to just shout it out. What do we use the W-4 for? You just got hired to a job, they hand you a W-4. What's it used for?
So they'll know what tax to take out.
Right. So federal income tax withholding. What about that I-9 form? What do they use that I-9 form for?
As an immigration status or working
right.
status.
Yep, exactly. To verify that you are eligible to work in the U.S. There are some other forms as well that get filled out at the state level. Remember, I showed you that form, the W-4 for Iowa includes not only income tax withholding information for Iowa, but also that child support reporting information. So, you know, what if I give you a description of a form that's used for hiring, can you match that up with what that form is? That sort of thing. That one. The different types of time recording devices, means of recording work time. So we've got what are they? Time clocks, badges. Some people will just put their information on an Excel spreadsheet, hand it in. You know, if there's remember we talked about iris scans and biometric types of timekeeping as well. If I give you a list of things, can you pick out which ones pertain to timekeeping? That sort of thing. Okay. Okay, so pay periods. Oh, whoops. Calculation of salary. So remember, can I erase this here? Um, so does anybody remember how would you calculate an hourly rate for a salaried individual who's paid on a biweekly basis? What are you going to start out with?
Take the salary and divide that by 26.
What's the 26 mean?
That's how many times you get paid bi-weekly.
Right, right. So this is our number of pays, annual pays. Okay, what does that get you?
How much per month or per bi-weekly?
Right, how much per pay period, right? This is our per pay. Salary. And if we needed to know on an hourly basis what they made, say 40-hour work week.
You divide that by 40.
We divide it, yeah, I think we divide it by 80 because it says bi-weekly,
Oh.
right? You can divide that by 80. So divided by 80 equals our hourly. Okay. So if I give you that information, somebody has, is on a semi-monthly or a monthly pay cycle, tell me what the calculation is to get them to an hourly rate. Okay. Let's see. So exempt employees, hourly rate, salary, yeah. Those different pay periods as well. So knowing, okay, somebody's paid monthly, how many pays do they receive in a year? I think you should all probably be able to figure out all of those. Exempt employees versus non-exempt employees. So exempt employees, are they generally paid on an hourly basis or a salaried basis? If they're exempt. And what does exempt mean? Exempt from what?
FLSA.
The FLSA, the time, right, the overtime and minimum wage requirements of the FLSA is what they're exempt from, which generally means they're paid on a salary basis, right? Not necessarily exclusively, but for the most part on a salary basis. Do exempt employees have to be paid overtime? Exempt employees? No. Nope, they do not have to be paid overtime for hours over 40. Is there any limit on the number of hours that they have to work? No, there's not any limit on the number of hours that anybody has to work, right? Except the number of hours that there are in a week. That's all you're limited by. All right. Social Security Act consists of what types of taxes? So remember we had the Social Security Act has two types of taxes contained in it. Remember what they are? Okay, so that's the percentage. Let's name them first. What are the types?
OAS and HI.
OASDI, otherwise known as Social Security, right? And HI, right? That health insurance, otherwise known as Medicare. Those are the two types of taxes. Now, the tax rates. So 6.2.
1.45.
Is that all though?
No.
Right, with this, so the employer pays that, employee also pays it, right? Okay,
Plus your 0.9.
plus your 0.9, exactly, you're reading my mind. So we've got that additional Medicare tax, which is only paid by the employee, which is 0.9%, or over 200,000 income, right? So our Social Security has a wage base, right? Remember what that wage base is? 147. All right, so this one kicks in after a certain income level is reached. This one stops after a certain income level is reached. This one has no limits, from 0 to infinity. Okay. So again, the employer doesn't pay anything on that additional Medicare tax. Let's see. So federal income tax withholding. Remember, we've got whether it's the pre-2020 method, I shouldn't say method. I don't have a better word for it. Pre-2020 W-2 forms or W-4 forms or post-2020 W-4 forms. There are two main methods of calculating withholding. Remember what those are? What was the first one? Bracket, wage bracket method, right? The wage bracket. And that's where we're using the table, right? And we've got the percentage method. Those two methods. Now for the wage bracket method is the easiest method, but we can only use it up to certain income levels, because that table ends at some point. Percentage method we could use is much more accurate as well, down to the penny. We can use it for any income level. And again, that is for pre-2020 and post-2020 for either one of those. Right? Yeah.
So like for the exam, on Blackboard, do we have to go back into the T table or you can print it out for us?
Everything that you need will be available to you. Well, and for the assessment exam, everything that any type of reference will be provided to you. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. As far as the final goes, though, you got access to your notes and book and everything. Okay. I mean, the only thing you've got your sheet that you can use. So reminding yourself of different tax rates and wage bases and the code of ethics and things like that would be advisable. All right, so remember we also have 4 factors that go into the calculation of federal withholding, and we use these factors whether we're using the wage bracket method or the percentage method. So for, we'll say pre-20 and post-2020, factors. So what do we have here? 2, 3, 4. First off, let's do the ones that we need for both. Remember, there are 2 factors that match exactly. So what are they?
Marriage,
So,
marriage status.
okay, so marital status, I'm going to put that down here. So for pre-2020, we need, which essentially is just married or single, right? But remember, for the post-2020, it's filing status, right?
So it's frequency of pay
Frequency of pay, that's right, that's one,
and taxable income.
right. Those 2 are the same. And then we got a 4th factor. So the checkbox, is that for pre-2020 or post-2020? Great. Checkbox?
Number of allowance.
Allowances, exactly. Number of allowances. We need those 4 pieces of information, regardless of whether we're using the wage bracket method or the percentage method. Okay. And again, the only ones, so these first 2 are the same. These are different. You guys have learned a lot. So with regard to these, yeah, if I give you a question saying, asking you, or giving you a list of, let's say, 3 factors: taxable income, frequency of pay, and filing status. Could you tell me which one you're going to need that information for? Pre-2020 or post-2020? Okay, so you'll want to know the difference between those. Okay. Let's see. Actually, this one, gosh, I don't know that we covered this in the book. I'll give you a little information here then. So if an employee asks the payroll department, say they filled out a W-4 form and had a certain amount withheld, and they didn't like that amount that was withheld. And then they go back to the payroll department and say, hey, I want you to change that. So I don't have quite as much withheld, and I want you to give me a refund of that money. Payroll department's not allowed to do that. Once it's processed, it's processed. If what's going to happen with that extra withholding, if he paid too much, he'll get it back when he files his taxes, right? So the payroll department themselves does not have the ability to go back and change withholding on a previous paycheck. Okay? I'm not sure that's something that I don't recall talking about that. So like the employee cannot have it, you can't go back and change it. They can't fix it on a future payday. I mean, they could change their withholding going forward if it's not correct. They could do that going forward, but they can't make a change and refund any of the past withholding on a paycheck. It's just going to be part of the prepayment for their income taxes. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Excellent. All right. Pre-tax and post-tax. We're talking about deductions here. So these are deductions from pay. Remember, we've got pre-tax, some that are pre-tax, and some that are post-tax. First off, what does pre-tax and post-tax mean?
Pay tax ahead before.
Right, so it has to do with when we're calculating the tax, right? When we're calculating the withholding. If it's a deduction that's pre-tax, we're going to deduct it before we calculate the tax. If it's a deduction that's post-tax, we're going to deduct it after we calculate the tax. So this has to do with when we make the deduction, right? Pre-tax deductions obviously are going to reduce our taxable income. So they have a tax benefit to them. Post-tax deductions do not have a tax benefit, right? So there are certain types of deductions that are pre-tax, certain types that are post-tax. You guys remember some of the types that are pre-tax?
Like 401k?
401k or retirement, right? Deductions. And we're talking about, well, for federal income tax purposes. Remember, we also have, for some deductions, like the 401k is pre-tax for federal income tax purposes, but it is post-tax for Social Security and Medicare tax purposes, right? Okay, so 401k, anything else? What else?
IRA.
So yeah, so IRA, those would be any of the, like the retirement. I can't read that. Insurance, right. So like health, dental, vision, insurance. As long as it's part of a, what was that type of plan called?
Cafeteria?
Cafeteria plan, right. Right, that was a Section 125 plan. Flex accounts. So, remember the dependent care deductions, medical expense deductions, HSAs. It's an extensive list, right? I'm not going to write down everything, but this is just an example. What about post-tax types of deductions? Items that do not provide a tax benefit.
Union dues?
Union dues. Right. Anything else? Anything else you can think of? About garnishments? What's that? Yeah, garnishments. For whatever reason, right? Debts, child support, alimony, anything like that. Garnishments. Charitable contributions. There are a lot of people that will contribute to like United Way through payroll deduction or other charities. That is not pre-tax for withholding purposes. It may be deductible on an individual's tax return. That's possible, but not everybody gets to take that deduction, only if they itemize their deductions. So that's why it's not pre-tax. So keeping those items in mind, let's see. A Roth IRA contribution, right? So Roth IRAs, that would be a different type of IRA. Roth, this is a special type of retirement plan that is not deductible. The contributions are not deductible, but when you take the distributions out when you're retired, it's not taxable. So you get to take it out tax-free. So, but that would not be deductible at that point. Let's see here. So yeah, just being able to make that distinction between pre-tax and post-tax types of deductions. Let's see. Can you calculate the taxable pay? You're not made to calculate the net pay, but the taxable pay. So this would be the gross pay after any of these deductions. If you're given, so let's just do an example. Let's say we've got an employee and they make $10.25 an hour, and they worked 42 hours, and they have 4% deduction for 401k. So they're contributing 4%. Can you calculate what their taxable pay is? So there's a couple things that you've got to do here, right? You've got to figure out what their gross pay is, and we've got some overtime in that calculation as well, and then figure out 4% in order to deduct that pre-tax deduction. So how would we do that? $10.25 an hour, 42 hours.
1025 times 40 is 14.
Is, how much is it? 410?
410, yeah.
All right, and then what? We've got 2 hours.
And then the overtime is 15,375.
Times 2 hours, right? So $10.25 an hour times 1.5 times 2 hours is how much?
3075.
Okay. So 440.75, and then we got to figure out how much this deduction is, times 4%. What's 4% of that?
1763.
1763. That's going to be our 401k. So 423.12 is our taxable income. Okay, so if you're given a scenario, you're given this information, and then you've got a choice of taxable amounts, can you pick out which one is correct? Okay. FLSA, know the major provisions of the FLSA. So we've got the overtime provision. What am I thinking here? Child labor is another one of the provisions that is covered by the FLSA. So I can't, I've drawn a blank. Overtime, wage, minimum wage. Remember, we got an hourly minimum wage. We also have a salary minimum wage, right? A weekly salary for those exempt employees. But know those major provisions of the FLSA, what it covers. let's see. Okay, so some of those acts that we talked about early on. What does the Age Discrimination and Employment Act do?
You can't fire someone if they're too old.
What's too old?
60.
Is it 40?
40. Yes, 40. Ancient. So you might want to take a look at that Age Discrimination Act, the major provisions of that. Let's see. Those employee records, if I give you a description of it's either a employee earnings record or a payroll register, tell you what type of information is contained, can you tell me which one of those it is? Okay. So just kind of review that difference between the two. Let's see. Yeah, the difference between the employee earnings record and the payroll register. At what point does an employer have to start paying their FUTA taxes? Like start making deposits for the FUTA taxes? 500, right? Once they've reached $500 liability in the year, then they have to start making that payment every quarter. Right. So knowing that threshold. Remember that look back period that we talked about for payroll tax deposits? So first off, when an employer is brand new, then they're automatically a monthly scheduled depositor, right? But when they're not brand new, when they've been around for at least a year, there's this look back period that the IRS uses to determine how frequently they have to make those deposits, whether it's monthly, quarterly, semi-weekly, what have you, right? So in that look back period, what they do is they extend, they look back from July 1st to June 30th to determine the deposit schedule for the next year, which would be January through December. So for example, right now, the look back period that we're in is from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. The amount of payroll tax liability that the employer has will determine next year for 2024 how frequently employers have to make those deposits. So I think, what was it, up to $50,000 for the full year was still a monthly scheduled depositor. Anything over 50,000 was going to want a semi-weekly deposit schedule. Yeah, Lisa.
Okay. I might have misunderstood you because I sort of thought I knew what this was talking about. You said right now we are in from July 1st through June 30th, 2023.
Yes.
So that's the look back period we're in?
So right now, our current look back period, yes. So this would be from 2022 to 2023. IRS is going to look back at the deposits made, the liability incurred by each employer during this time. And then in November, they're going to send out notices to those employers to tell them for next year, this is your deposit schedule.
Okay, so even though it hasn't got to June yet, they're going to wait till June. They don't look at it now. Okay.
Right.
I was going to say,
Exactly.
well, that doesn't make any sense, but okay, wait until after June. That makes sense.
This is when the data is collected during these periods.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah. in order to determine what that deposit schedule is going to be.
All right, thank you.
You bet. So, and again, it's dependent on payroll tax liability. And that would include all payroll taxes, right? How much they collected in income taxes from employees, how much Social Security and Medicare tax for both the employer and the employee portion as well. Will then depend, not the FUTA tax, because FUTA's got its own schedule, right? We're just talking here about the federal income taxes and how frequently they're going to pay those taxes that are due on the 941. Okay. So federal unemployment tax, is that paid by the employer or the employee or both? Employer, right? Employer only. SUTA tax depends upon the state, right? There are a few states out there that have the employees share in that responsibility. But for FUTA tax, it's only the employer. Okay, so FUTA tax credit. Remember, there are two factors that would reduce the SUTA tax credit that an employer has. You remember what those two factors are? Two things, one of two things would have to happen in order for them to lose some of their credit.
The state owes the country.
Right, so if the state that they're in is behind on their payments to the federal government for FUTA taxes, or what's the other one?
The employer stops paying them.
The employer, right, exactly. The employer is late in paying their SUTA taxes. Exactly. The whole idea behind those is to encourage employers and states to pay what they owe on a timely basis and to fully fund the SUTA programs. Okay. All right. Journal entries. So remember, we've got some, if it's a payable account, what does that mean? If it's got the word payable in it, what does that mean?
Liability.
It's a liability, right? It's something that is owed at some point in the future, right? If it's an expense, it's got the word, well, it's an expense might be the payment. Well, the expense is going to be incurred in the period in which, this is a certain definition, in which it's incurred. Somebody just chimed in. Yeah, Tammy.
Is an expense an asset?
No.
Oh.
An asset is something that in the future is going to provide income to the company. So an asset, a piece of equipment is an asset because it's going to help to generate income in the future, right? Cash is an asset because it can be used to generate more income in the future as well, either through paying employees or paying vendors, what have you. An expense is something that we currently incur. How do I define this?
It's used to calculate equity.
Yeah, well, it's used to calculate income, net income, which the net income, yeah, eventually,
Like the accounting,
right, yeah. But so we have we have a lot of expense accounts that we're using. We've got wages or salaries expense, right? And those expenses are always going to match the period in which they are incurred, right? So that's why we had that very last adjusting entry for salaries that we haven't even paid yet, we're still expensing them because that expense has been incurred in the current period. So just recalling that kind of the names of some of those accounts as well. It's an expense, except for payroll taxes, which your book likes to list without expense behind the name, but it is an expense account. A liability is always going to have payable in that name, unless it's a long-term liability, but we're not talking about long-term liabilities here. Let's see. So if I give you a scenario of, okay, so we paid, our company paid the SUTA taxes. So we incurred that liability in a prior period, and now we're paying it. What does the journal entry look like? What's the debit going to be? Right. I do SUTA taxes payable. What's the credit? Cash. Cash. Right. Something along those lines. So I give you a description of, okay, we are currently paying the employees. You know, we have a payday. What's the journal entry to record the payment to employees and the withholding? Not using necessarily specific numbers, but knowing what that journal entry looks like. Okay. What form do we report FUTA taxes on? We have a form that we use once a year, 940. Right. 941 is for those federal income taxes, Social Security, Medicare taxes. So if I give you a description, say which form is it that we use to report this? You can pick that out. How often is the Form 941 filed? Quarterly. When do employees have to receive their W-2 form? What's that? So they do have to receive it yearly. What's the due date?
Isn't it like before February, like last day of February?
January 31st.
Say that again, Lisa?
January 31st.
January 31st. Yep.
When they have to receive it, or just when it has to be sent out?
That's when they have to, well, that's when it has to be sent out by, but that's the due date that they be, yeah.
Because I've gotten W-2s.
They have to be provided to the employees by that date. So if they're in the mail, they've been provided to the employees by that date. If they're handed to them, they've been provided. But it's January 31st. Self-employment taxes. Remember we talked about those back in chapter 3. Remember the Social Security and Medicare taxes are paid by or shared by the employer and the employee. When you're self-employed, you are the employer and the employee, right? You still have that wage base of 147 for Social Security taxes. But when you are self-employed, you got to pay both halves of those taxes. So if I give you an amount, say, okay, so Kathy earns $100,000 of self-employment income. That's her only source of income. Okay, only source of income. What's her self-employment tax going to be? So that 100,000 is going to be multiplied by, so for Social Security, 12.4%, right? And then for Medicare tax, 2.9%. Right. So we have 12,400 and 2,900. 15,300, 15.3%. Great. So knowing that it's self-employment taxes.
And then don't they also have to pay food and SUDA off of that too?
If they're self-employed, no. There's no federal unemployment. You have to technically be an employee. They're not technically an employee. They are self-employed. They're being taxed as though they are the employee and employer for Social Security and Medicare tax purposes. But because they're not technically an employee at a company, they do not have to pay SUDA or FUTA taxes. If they, that's a little bit more advanced, but if they were an owner of an S corporation and were also an employee of that S corporation, that would be a different story because they are an employee. But they do have to be an employee in order to be subject to those taxes.
If they were self-employed and they had an employee,
Then they would have to pay those taxes on that employee. Yes, but not on themselves. So remember, also partners, partners and partnerships don't have to, they have to pay self-employment tax, partners and partnerships, and they have to pay, but they're not subject to FUTA or SUTA taxes on their income. But if that partnership has other employees, then yes. Just the owners of those entities are treated differently because they're not really under the umbrella definition of an employee. Okay, so that is, and the next review here will go faster because a lot of these are repeats. So that's the assessment. Things to pay attention for with regard to the assessment. Let's see here. Oops. You'll see a lot of these look very familiar, these topics. Hold on here. Okay, so there's different laws that govern payroll accounting. So GAAP, we talked about that's our journal entries and all that. But it does, GAAP comes into play because it tells us how expenses are recorded, how liabilities are recorded, all of that kind of stuff. Those different employment laws and tax laws. So we've got employment laws, fair employment laws that really don't have anything to do with taxes, but they tell employers how they have to behave toward employees. And then we've got those tax laws as well. Code of ethics, again, we already talked about that. Human resources and payroll department. So a lot of these are questions that are similar to what we just went over, but they're different questions. So same types of topics though. So the sheet that you put together for the assessment will be helpful to you when you take the exam as well as a summary sheet. Yes, you have access to all of your notes and all of your book, but that will also be helpful to you just sort of as a quick guide. Okay, so don't throw it away is what I'm saying. You may want it again. You may want to use it again. Payroll cycle, again, first, steps, last steps, that sort of thing. Those new hire forms, W-4s, I-9s, same sort of thing. Exempt versus non-exempt, knowing the difference between that. We've already discussed that. OASDI and Medicare taxes. Let's see. Change something here. Just a second. Let's see. Same thing with OASDI and HI. Can you define what that Social Security wage base is? Like if I give you different options for a definition of what the Social Security wage base is, can you pick out what the correct definition is? So, for example, all taxable income earned by an employee during the year, is that a correct definition? All taxable income? No. All amounts earned by an employee during the year, which is different from all amounts paid, right? Right. Okay. All wages earned below a certain amount. Yeah, I mean, that is, and that certain amount changes every year, right? I mean, that's a broad definition, obviously, but can you pick out the right one? Percentage method and wage bracket. Again, factors used in those 4 factors that we talked about used in income tax withholding, both pre and post 2020. Let's see. Additional Medicare tax rate. I'm just going to pick out the ones that are kind of different from.
And additional Medicare taxes at 0.9%, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. There are some true-false questions in this exam as well, which means you've got a 50% chance of getting them wrong if you're just guessing. Let's see. True-false questions around the Fair Labor Standards Act. You know, as far as what are the things that it covers? Wage, hours worked, child labor, that sort of thing. Questions about, you know, if employees are paid bi-weekly, how often does that mean that they're paid? If they're paid semi-monthly, how often does that mean that they're paid? Sort of thing. What's the overtime rate? Mm-hmm. What is included as an employer or an employee for FICA purposes? We just went over that. Self-employed individuals are not employees. Partners and partnerships are not employees for purposes of FICA tax. Independent contractors. So do employers pay payroll taxes on behalf of independent contractors? No, right. They're 1099s. They have to pay their own. They're self-employed. Different types of taxable wages under FICA. So wages, salaries, sick pay, vacation pay, severance pay, those types of things that are considered to be taxable wages. Tips. If somebody receives $40 of tips during the month, is that considered taxes that have to be reported? Yeah.
Yes.
It's over, yep, it's over 30. Gross up. Remember the gross up calculation? Okay, so what are the taxes that are used in that calculation? Same taxes that are used when we're calculating what net pay is, right? Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes, and it's the tax rate that we're going to use. Federal income tax rate, but we're going to use that 22% flat rate if it's a bonus, right? And then state taxes if we have state taxes, if they're involved, right? Be careful of the wording on some of these questions too. Read carefully, okay? Because it's kind of easy to get tripped up. Are FUTA and SUTA taxes applicable to part-time employees? Yeah. Yep. Doesn't really matter if they're part-time or full-time. Are FUTA taxes, does the tax rate for FUTA taxes depend upon the position within the company? No. Well, the rate itself, though, the rate is the same for everybody. Whether they're covered or not, yes, it depend upon the position, absolutely. But the rate is going to be the same if the individual is covered. Doesn't matter if it's CEO or the janitor. Doesn't matter. Employee earnings records as well.
In the grades, there is like bonus 10 points.
Mm-hmm. That's just because I'm up to I've got 990 points. I need an extra 10. That's if I like you. No. Don't worry about the 10 points. That's use it. I just have to. I want to round it. I don't know. I could do 990 points. 1,000 just seems much cleaner.
Well, I have spent several nights crying about that extra 10 points, so.
Oh, well, you can stop crying. When is the Form 940 due? 940. Once a year. What's the due date?
January 31st, unless you pay it on time, then it's February the 10th.
Yep, exactly. Generally speaking, January 31st, right? American Payroll Association awards 2 different payroll professional credentials. Remember what those are? One is the fundamental payroll certification, and the other is the certified payroll. What is it? Certified CPC, certified payroll. I don't even remember off the top of my head here. I can't remember exactly what that's. FPC, Fundamental Payroll Certificate, and the Certified Payroll Professional, sorry, CPP, are the two that are offered. Which, by the way, I just had another student that passed the Fundamental Payroll Certificate after taking the Payroll Certification Review class. So that's something you're interested in. I suggest you take it. The class is a lot less expensive way of getting it than taking one of their review classes, because the APA classes are like at least $1,000 for the review class, and you don't get any financial aid for it. Okay, questions. That was the final exam. So remember, this one, you can use all your notes and everything.
So everybody gets the points?
Everybody, you're obsessed over the 10 points. Yes, you'll get the 10 points. Especially those who sit in the front row. I should have told you that, yes. The points go down the further away you get from the front row. Yes, extra 10 points. Questions? Do you have questions on the homework? I know I've kind of taken up most of your time here. Again. But I will tell you, so on Thursday, we're going to start right like at 11:15. So you'll have like from 11:15 to 12:15 to take the exam. After that, the exam stops, so you won't have any more time than that. I'm happy to stick around and answer homework questions then too. But I also have office hours right now, so if there's anything that you have questions about and you've got the time. Nothing?
So the last day of your office hours is actually going to be Thursday. You have no office hours next week, correct?
Yeah, the Tuesday, and it's not necessary. I scheduled an eye appointment that day, thinking that I was going to be done. So I probably won't. But I can meet with you like virtually if you need that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have. Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to think of what the time was. I can't remember off the top of my head. Let's see.
When the grades will be posted?
Well, I don't have to get them in until the 8th, but they'll be, whatever shows up in Blackboard, probably by Friday, will be what your grade is in the class. But I don't have to, yeah, they won't, I don't know when DMAC actually gets them to you once I've submitted them. Okay. Other questions? Nothing? All right. We'll see you on Thursday. Or like I said, I'm here for office hours if you need anything right now. So let's see.
For the review class, I don't have to like connect at certain hour.
No, it's online. Yep, it's completely online. Yep. And it's offered during the summer and in the spring semester. So, and I know right now the summer section there's a wait list, but if you But go ahead and get on that wait list because oftentimes some people will at the last minute drop out too. So
Do you know who teaches it this summer online?
what's that?
Do you know who the teacher is at online for the payroll, whatever it
Yeah,
is?
you're looking at her.
Oh, Kelly. Okay, I think I know her.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, I'm number 3 on the wait list, so you may or may
All right,
not hear from me.
Okay. Well, don't worry. Right now, because what's going to happen is it'll either class students will drop out at the last minute, or we'll expand it to add a few more students to the class. And if the wait list gets to be too long, we'll add another section.
Okay.
So,
And do you do videos? I guess that's my main thing. I was just like, I just don't want to just read it and that's it.
yes, I do videos,
Okay.
video lectures. Yep.
So you have to pass the class to be able to take the next class, right?
This class, well, so you don't have to pass this in order to take like the certification review class. No, you don't. There's no prerequisite for the certification review class. It's just I don't think so. Let me double check, but I'm pretty sure that there isn't.
Been going over the ink in the canvas with the tutor. I've been going.
Oh, you have been going? Okay, good.
Yeah, 'cause I've been driving too much. I don't have time to like sit down. I have to drop the kids off.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
So
I get it.
I'm getting there. And
Yep.
I understand a lot of things, once I get the class.
Yep. Yeah, there is no prerequisite for that class. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You are welcome. All right. Go over to my office.